Our headlights swept across the quiet lot at Boston's store that September night in 2006, revealing just 2 or 3 other parked cars. Though we anticipated being alone at this hour, it wasn't out of the ordinary for such a popular spot. Who knows what the others were up to, but a paranormal investigation was on our agenda. At least there were no serial killer-looking vans hanging around, I thought. Tonight exuded a strangeness in the air that previous treks lacked. I peered out the window with hesitation, buying time in a stalling tactic. The trees overshadowed the man-made clearing, reaching out and distorting themselves into sinister shapes. Stepping out of the vehicle now meant leaving behind the welcome distraction of System of a Down's CD playing and the soft, reassuring glow of the dashboard lights. Still, curiosity edged out apprehension. Gathering myself, I let the car door be the one to break the silence. The rocks were oddly loud under our shoes, amplifying the absence of crickets under a starless fall sky. Grabbing our bikes and backpacks, I shuddered at the sudden chill in the air as we headed down the trail to Lonesome Lock. It didn't feel like the other times we'd visited. Perhaps the location was issuing a warning. Only tens of feet away, the bridge at the trailhead awaited our arrival. Traversing it meant saying goodbye to the ironic safety of a pitch-black parking lot out in the sticks. A modest metal and wood structure, it introduced itself as an unofficial gateway, drawing attention to its own peculiar significance. Crossing the physical and metaphorical threshold, we now defied the darkness with only a pair of dinky bike lights to guide us. This particular evening seemed to be holding its breath in efforts to hide from its own shadow. Already cloaked in an uncomfortable feeling, I figured there could be only one possible outcome. Will it dissipate or escalate, I wondered. The only way to find out was to forge ahead. Maybe I was just imagining things. Traveling south, the towpath is fairly open save for a canopy of trees to our right. Though I could barely see a radius of a few feet to my front and sides, I continued to scan nervously while following closely behind my husband. There could be anything in there, I thought. What if something leaps out? The drone of the turnpike in the distance began getting louder, snapping me out of my what-ifs as we approached the I-80 overpass. The enormous man-made structure buzzed with its usual tractor-trailers and cars above. But the eerie, random noises ricocheting off its massive supports just added to my uneasiness. A few were unidentifiable, somewhat animal-like in nature, while others sounded like a baby crying. The cacophony was at its most unnerving while riding directly underneath. Even though my legs were getting somewhat fatigued, I was all too happy to pedal faster without a second thought. It didn't matter if the din waned, its haunting nature was unwavering. Points of light in the distance approached us on the trail intermittently, as folks went about their business of walking, jogging, and cycling at night. I was fully aware that we weren't alone, yet still somehow surprised to see other people this late. What if they were psychotic murderers? What if they had weapons? My paranoia dialed up a notch as my mind thought of various scenarios that were most likely incredibly far-fetched. Between Boston Store and Lock 29, this area of Stumpy Basin is home to a wooden bridge that snakes across the wetlands. Our bike tires hummed a different tune as they acquainted themselves with the planks. The sounds of the frogs became disorienting as they alerted each other in all directions. I'll admit, all of these new stimuli were making me more anxious. I awkwardly navigated the narrow platform, rolling around the possibility of getting startled and plunging into the swamp. I just kept focusing on my husband's light directly ahead until we reached our stop. Built between 1825 and 1827, Lock 31, or Lonesome Lock, sits just a few hundred feet from the Cuyahoga River. Waterless, gateless, and in a state of ruin, the 90 by 15-foot lock received its name due to its isolated location along the 308-mile stretch of the Erie Canal. An historical signpost marks the edge of the structure, providing information to curious passers-by. The irregular terrain makes this location accessible only by foot, so leaving the towpath is at your own risk. Its total distance from our origin point is about 1.5 miles. Giving our bikes a rest, our legs a stretch, and our eyes a challenge, the real strangeness was just beginning. I tried to shake it off, told myself it was all in my head, and sat down on the old stone edge of the lock. Facing east, our backs to the towpath, we decided to quietly observe the environment in complete darkness. Wishing I'd kept a better journal of all the conditions at the time of our visit, my best recollection is that the weather was calm, teetering in the high 60s to low 70s, and no precipitation. Occasionally, a fleeting, unnatural coldness seeped from the air and into our bones. We did have lightweight hoodies with us, thankfully. Whether that evening offered us a new moon or an overcast sky, there was no additional light source, making it even creepier. It was 2006 with terrible cameras on our flip phones and little investigation experience. We didn't own much in the way of equipment. Any planned EVP sessions or photography fell by the wayside as a dreamlike ambiance tried to seduce our attention. We weren't falling for a false sense of security. Not out here. No way. On the far side of the structure, the looming forest stood like an ancient sentinel, serving its eternal role as lockkeeper. Sitting quietly and very still, we peered into nothing but darkness. Occasionally, rustling behind us revealed eyeshine in the brush on the opposite side of the towpath. Unbothered, the wildlife went about its usual nighttime activities, as it was accustomed to invasion of their environment. But of course my mind conjured up the likes of rabid raccoons, which didn't help to calm my nerves. While the darkness was forcing our eyes to adjust, we could feel the atmosphere undergoing an unfriendly metamorphosis. This weird expedition seemed to be getting weirder. My senses heightened as every new sound became yet another mystery to solve. Phantom footsteps emanated from where the trail dissolves into a black void. I assured myself that other human visitors were roaming about, though now they were just ambiguous, faceless shapes. After about 20 to 30 minutes, it was like someone, or something, flipped a switch that catapulted us into unbelievably unsettling territory. It felt like an unseen force was commanding our attention, and the entire area became deafeningly silent. Small, faintly twinkling lights started to manifest just above the far right edge of the lock. At first, we chalked it up to fireflies. When I realized in real time that it was September and there were no fireflies, my stomach dropped. I immediately recalled that I hadn't seen one single glowing insect all evening. My husband and I elbowed each other at the same time in a "do you see this?" gesture, as our eyes widened like dinner plates. My hair bristled, goosebumps covered my arms, and a suspicious hush came over the area as the strange, bright greenish white-colored sparkling lights increased in intensity. They appeared to be forming an egg-shaped orb, floating 2 to 3 feet in the air, and measuring approximately 1 foot tall by 1.5 feet wide. Somehow, it seemed they had a consciousness of their own. Still fixated, and with the most logical explanation off the list, we speculated it could be a pack of animals' eyes. But no, these weren't in pairs, nor did they sync up with each other. They weren't pulsating, but rather resembled rapidly flashing strobes independent of one another, save for their collective cluster. It shimmered like glitter, or seeing stars, like being punched in the eye. We were absolutely entranced by whatever it was that was materializing in front of us, yet never let our guard down. As the lights grew brighter, our fear grew stronger. Whatever effect they were having seemed to escalate exponentially. I received the answer about which direction the evening would go, and it was not the one I was looking for. Our unwavering gaze lasted at least a good 10 minutes and seemed to surpass time and space. The palpable, intense fear was accompanied by a sense of being watched. Suddenly, a panicking deer bolted out of the brush behind us, breaking the spell the lights demanded to cast on us. I wanted to jump out of my skin as we were unceremoniously and violently shoved back into reality. But what caused the animal to dart out simultaneously, just as we were struck by that extremely foreboding feeling? Did the whole place become charged with energy? Or was it just a coincidence? Being on edge and petrified only reinforced the notion that we were unwanted intruders in something or someone's space. Merely describing it as terrifying doesn't do it justice. We knew what we saw, and we knew we needed to leave ASAP. My husband, a cool and collected skeptic of a man, was not someone to hastily vacate an area due to an odd feeling. However, on this particular evening, our instincts were in perfect alignment. Grabbing everything at once, we jumped on our bikes and raced full speed without looking back, not even completely sure what we were fleeing from. We only hoped that the headlights atop our handlebars had enough AA battery juice to last until we reached the safety of our car. Sights, sounds, and emotions blurred together as the landmarks whizzed by. The stalwart I-80 bridge mocked us with screeching laughter in the distance as we hightailed our way past it. The obsidian shadows of the CVNP parking area were welcoming compared to what we just experienced. Hastily tossing everything in the trunk, we peeled out onto Boston Mills Road, unapologetically leaving the other vehicles behind. We saw not one living soul on our way out of town. Breathless, animated, and just about speeding through the winding back roads, we recounted our adventure the whole drive home. It was clear that he and I shared an identical and intense reaction. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention he isn't a very vibey person. I've only ever known him to be grounded, calm, and rational. There is something to be said for the entire experience. From the moment we arrived, something felt off, yet I still pressed forward. I'm one to trust my gut, because when I don't, I end up learning the hard way. We're not quite sure what happened or why, but we have some ideas. 19 years later, more tools and information are available to help us unpack the phenomenon. The paranormal backstory. 19th century lore tells of swindlers, muggers, and vicious criminals frequenting the area. Though evidence, if any, is scarce, rumors of multiple murders and the spirit of a headless specter have been reported over the span of a century. Boatmen often superstitiously refuse to pass Stumpy Basin's Bend after nightfall, fearing a run-in with the paranormal. Many chose to stop at Boston or Peninsula, almost gleefully taking the L for delays. During the canal's 1826 construction, laborers were claimed by swamp fever, treacherous working conditions, and are said to rest nearby in unmarked burial mounds. Excavated dirt from the canal ditch was used, since an abundance of tree roots made it difficult to dig. A mere stone's throw away, a former Cleveland councilman tragically met his end on the Valley Railroad's tracks in 1886. Additionally, there were whispers that a haunted house close to the site harbored a strange jack-o'-lantern type apparition, Is there a possibility this incident was a hoax? The terrain issue. Lock 31 is located in a secluded area of Stumpy Basin, only accessible by foot. The towpath sits close to the bank of the Cuyahoga River and serves as the abandoned lock's western border. Surrounded by a large swath of marshy swampland, navigating through the vegetation is sufficiently difficult in daylight. The east side of the lock where the floating lights appeared is rife with treacherous terrain, dense brush, and an adjacent steep drop-off. Frolicking off the path at night without good enough reason, A, would be extremely challenging, and B, is definitely something that'd make me question your sanity. Questionable light source. In 2006, the overall brightness of LEDs was still evolving, from flashlights to children's toys. If such a device existed that was capable of producing small, rapidly strobing white and green lights, that could also quietly float in an independent cluster, it was not widely available to the average consumer. The FAA just started issuing permits outside of the military that year. Hobby drones had limited capabilities, were still very niche, and became more user-friendly in the 2010s. As for laser pointers, hundreds of them would have to be levitating wirelessly off the ground, controlling their intensity and strobe speed while making zero noise. I'm in the camp of not likely here. Even if such technology was up to snuff, to perform such a lively light show would have been a fantastic feat. An ordinary civilian would have to be completely silent, untraceable, and expertly agile in total darkness whilst skulking around in a squishy remote area of a national park sans power sources. And how would they manipulate light to materialize in front of us and float 2 to 3 feet in mid-air? This was not ground-level bioluminescent foxfire, nor a projection off of another surface. It all seems quite unlikely to pull off. At the very least, an individual wishing to hide would have required night vision goggles to maneuver relatively safely in this environment. But again, how could anyone know people would be sitting on a remote abandoned lock on a whim at midnight? The fireflies theory. In Northeast Ohio, fireflies are typically gone by September, having peaked in June, July. I can say without a doubt these lights weren't scattered, didn't sync up, and formed a cluster of tiny strobes. Not one of them drifted off on their own, and not a single illuminated stray was seen that night on our way in or out. I really wanted the explanation to be this easy, but surrounding details just don't support it. How can we analyze this in the context of 2025? Over the years, I would occasionally think about this encounter, but dismissed it as something natural. I mean, we were just two people scared of the dark, right? Last year, I just so happened to pick up a copy of Michel Bélanger's book, Haunting Experiences. The accounts within, detailing fairy lights and activity in the woods in yet another Northeast Ohio location, made me reflect upon and reevaluate our strange time. Other people have witnessed this. The sights, the feelings, the atmosphere. It all made sense. Another work I dove into was Robert Kirk's The Secret Commonwealth of Elves, Fauns, and Fairies. Though an antiquated read, many other pieces of modern media reflect similarities. George P. Hansen's The Trickster and the Paranormal is an even deeper dive. Liminal spaces remain a staunch theme. Then, in July 2025, a random Instagram reel popped into my feed, in which Mr. John E. L. Tenney shared a personal story about haunted Mackinac Island. What he said sent a chill down my spine. He proceeded to describe fairy lights that can occur any time of day, suddenly appearing as if someone threw glitter into the air. And it wasn't just a few of them, according to Mr. Tenney. It was self-illuminating sparkles, numbering in the thousands. And they also demonstrated the ability to travel upwards out of or down into the earth. Bells went off everywhere in my head. This short snippet validated so much. I sat there dumbfounded for a few minutes as the memories garnered clarity. It was the closest description of what happened that night, nearly 2 decades ago, that I'd ever heard. Where does this analysis leave us? 2 people simultaneously witnessed the same visual manifestations and shared the same physical sensations. We were grounded, alert, and sober, coming face to face with unexplainable phenomena. Who or what then was responsible for profoundly disrupting our nervous systems? Lore from virtually everywhere on Earth tells of fairy lights leading people to dangerous places and even to their demise. The lights we saw were awe-inspiring, beckoning, and perhaps luring us to an area that was virtually impossible to reach during the day, let alone after nightfall. They seemed manipulative and not at all friendly. We could easily file this incident with other trickster fae accusations. But is that what really took place? Guides, nature spirits, elementals. Where do they fit in this puzzle? Are the monikers interchangeable? Was it a manipulation of the 2 of us or the environment? We didn't notice anyone else having a reaction to the surroundings, but we didn't stop to find out either. Interviews would have been awkward, but could have been beneficial by A, corroborating our story, and B, possibly shedding light on a bigger picture and/or frequency of activity. Was it all in our heads? Did we imagine it? What constitutes a group hallucination? Some technical gear would have helped document atmospheric changes, but I'm not 100% convinced that any of it actually captures paranormal activity. Certain entities or objects are said to originate from the in-between. Could interdimensional beings be the culprits? The spiritual and the physical nature of Lock 31 is reinforced by the fact it lies between a river and a highway. It could very well be a prime area for manifestations. Whether such notions come into play as stone tape theory, or the place is just steeped in history and mystery, something feels different here. The deaths and rumors of more violent acts that occurred left their mark. Could those have fueled the atmosphere? Human suffering, anger, sadness, fear, powerful emotions concentrated in a place where water flows, the nearby interstate rises above the landscape, and people travel daily on the towpath. All of these collectively carry energy past the lock system, for it is a throughway, a continuously fed current. It may be secluded, but not completely forgotten. Thank you for watching.